Hello Tripsters, welcome back to a new video. We often get the question from people who are planning on traveling to China whether it is safe to travel here or not. So in today's video, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, and we also asked a couple of other YouTubers to chime in and give their opinion. They also create content about traveling and living in China, so it should be pretty interesting to get their perspective because most of them have lived here for quite some time, 2-3 years. And we've been here for
Too long.
Too long. We're going on 9 years, so we have a lot of experience. You've probably seen a lot of our train videos, a lot of the other stuff that we've done. So we've been many places, and if you go over to Go Yvonne's channel, you'll see that we've done even more videos over there. So we've been many places, and we feel like we have a pretty good
idea,
yeah.
Whether it's safe
of whether
to travel
it's safe,
here
yeah.
or not. So we first are going to talk with Miriam from Miriam in China.
Yeah, Miriam is actually a kind of new creator, and she does a lot of videos about rural China and traveling and living in rural China. And her videos are really interesting. We really like her. She's very genuine, very honest. And so let's see what she has to say about traveling in China and whether or not it is safe.
I have lived and traveled in China for about 4 years now, and I must say I generally feel very safe here. When you are in the city, so I think you should definitely watch out for like pickpocketing and the scams, like the typical tea house scam or people who want to learn English or practice English with you. But generally I feel safe even in big cities walking alone in the evenings. I travel a lot in rural China and to smaller towns, and I've never felt unsafe here. My advice is just that you have to trust your gut feeling.
So Miriam touched on two things which are important to discuss. And the first one is scams and the second one is pickpocketers. And we actually have two stories about this, and it actually involves our fathers in both of them. So when my father came to China back in 2008, he came off the plane and he went out in Shanghai, started to explore the city. And when he was out walking around, a nice young lady walked up and asked if she could practice her English. And this is a very common scam. It's called the drink scam, the tea scam, the beer scam, and what they usually target is single men wandering around, single foreign men wandering around. In my case, my father was here by himself. He was wandering around. A woman came up and said, "Oh, where are you from?" And he said, "I'm from the United States." And she said, "Oh, I want to practice my English. Can we go to a tea house and practice English?" Right? And he said, "Sure, why not?" He didn't know anything about the scam. And then at the end of this session, at the end of this English session, the bill came, and it was about $300 US, which is a lot of money. I mean, for anything, to be honest. And this was one meal. He had maybe 2 pots of tea and maybe some fried rice or some snacks or something. And so at the end he was like, "I don't want to pay this," and the woman was like, "Oh, but you have to pay, we ordered the food." The owner came out, started giving a hard time. He ended up paying $300 US.
Oh, wow, all of it?
Yeah, he ended up paying it, but he went back about 2 weeks later to the restaurant and forced the guy to give him some money back. So in a weird way it worked out for him, but for many people they don't know about this, and this is just one scam here in China. There's lots of scams like this.
Lots of different ones.
Yeah.
Miriam mentioned the pickpocketing at the beginning, and my father actually almost got pickpocketed. Like the first time he came to China, he was with my mom on a local bus in Shaoxing, a fairly small town actually. And I think it was rush hour, really busy, and he was paying attention, but it happened so fast that he didn't notice it. But what happened, what he saw later, is that somebody had tried to, with a knife, cut open his jacket. He had his wallet in the inside pocket of his jacket and tried to cut out the pocket, tried to cut it out and then grab the wallet and snatch it up. Luckily, it didn't quite work. So he was fine. He only had a broken jacket, which was quite upsetting to him because it was a new jacket.
Yeah, he was not happy about that.
No, he wasn't. But luckily, he still had his wallet and important cards and everything.
And with that, I mean, obviously the guy had some kind of knife or sharp blade, and so he could have seriously been hurt. You probably won't get robbed in China with a knife or, I mean, obviously not a gun. They don't have guns here, really. Very limited amount of guns here. So you probably won't get mugged, but you might get pickpocketed, right? And that leads to the next thing that we want to talk about.
Yes, because with that knife, he could have gotten hurt, which brings us to our next YouTube friend, who is Jamie from Jamie's Journey. And he has an interesting story to tell as well.
Hi, I'm Jamie from Jamie's Journey, and I started my YouTube channel when I had to have brain surgery. No, seriously, I had brain surgery, and that's why I started my YouTube channel. I created the Rough Guide to Brain Surgery. Go check it out. So Miguel's asked me to talk to you about whether or not I feel safe in China, so I feel that I should base it on medical care. So do I feel safe getting medical care in China? Yes, I do. And no, I don't. Just let me explain. If you're going for something routine in China, like this week I had to go for an MRI, I have to have one every year, that's fine, that's perfectly fine, it works well. If you're going for a health checkup for your insurance, again, works perfectly well. But when you start going for something just that little bit more complicated, like surgery for example, that's when it starts to get a little bit, For example, a colleague of mine had to go to the doctors because he torn or partially torn one of the ligaments in his bicep. The doctor told him that they'd have to take a ligament from his leg to help repair that one. Luckily, in a couple of weeks after he'd had the injury, he'd gone back to the UK on holiday and went for a second opinion just to check everything was as it was. And the doctor there went, "I'm sorry, say what now? We haven't done that type of surgery in about 5 years."
So Jamie has a really interesting story, and he lives here in China, and so he's creating a channel about obviously living after brain surgery, and the backdrop is China. So if you are interested in knowing more about him, check out his channel because it's actually pretty cool, and some of the stuff he's doing is pretty interesting. But his point about medical treatment here in China is what's really important to talk about, because we've been here 9 years about, and so as you can imagine, we've had medical issues throughout that time. Yvonne actually has a story about that.
Yes, it's a couple of years ago when I first came to China. I was coughing a lot, like seriously a lot. It was nonstop, you remember, right? It was bad. And I went to the hospital, a Chinese hospital, because there was no Western hospital in the city we were living in at the time. And they kept on sending me back with all kinds of medicine, but nothing was helping me. And then one night I was coughing so much that I actually heard a crack. So I go back, and then, well, after...
No, I'm just laughing because it's such a crazy story.
Yeah. I decided to go back to the hospital because, yeah, this has been going on too long now, and I really want a solution for my problem. And then they decide to take an x-ray, and they see that one of my ribs is broken. So I actually was coughing so much that I broke one of my ribs.
Yeah, so I mean, sometimes the hospitals here are very good, very cheap, but they aren't necessarily the most professional, kind of like what Jamie was saying in his clip. So one of the things that we are more and more an advocate of is actually health insurance, or traveler's insurance. A lot of travelers don't think about it, and they think, oh, I'll be fine. But I mean, I've had issues where I've wrecked a motorcycle and just straight into a wall. I just flew right into a wall, and luckily I didn't get hurt in that incident. But there's, you know, a lot of times the biggest risk to travelers is traffic. And so if you don't have traveler's insurance, your bills can get really expensive really quickly, or you can end up in a situation where you're going to like a Chinese hospital, you don't speak the language, you're not sure what they're giving you in terms of medicine, you're not, just the whole situation can get out of hand really quickly. So we suggest buying traveler's insurance.
Yes.
And
it's really surprising to hear that now finally after 8 years, because well, in the Netherlands we love insurances, so I always tell Miguel, you should get a travel insurance when we travel. I have one. And he's like, nah. But finally now he's come around and realizes that travel insurance
really helpful.
Is really important.
And you know, when you're traveling, obviously you have to be aware of your situation and be aware of what you're doing. We have one more guest who actually is a good friend of ours. She lives a block away. And she's got a pretty cool channel. Her and her husband run the channel from Nico Films, and she's going to tell you a little bit about her opinion in terms of traveling. They just went to the south of China, and they did this like 3-week trip, and they're going to be putting those videos out pretty soon. We're super excited to see them, but let's hear what she has to say because she's traveled many places.
Hi, I'm Nico from Nico Films. I make videos about life in China and also traveling around China and Asia. Chip-in asked me to answer the question, is China safe to travel? Well, personally, I think China's one of the safest countries I've ever been to. In every train station, metro, airport, etc., there's loads of security. Everyone's really friendly. And also, there's lots of signs and information that's in English, so it's really easy. If you're thinking about traveling to China, then I say do it. I've also got lots of city guides over on my channel, so if you need any help and information, go check them out.
So as you can see, we gave some of our personal stories about living here in China and traveling in China. We've been many places. Thank you to the YouTubers who were willing to, jump in and give their opinion. It's, really cool that we can actually talk to these other people and get their opinions to provide something a little bit different for our audience. Obviously, it's not just us saying, yeah, it's safe, come to China. There's other people who have traveled and lived here for some time. And so some of the biggest things that you have to worry about are going to be
the following. So pickpocketing, that is one of the things you have to pay attention to. We just have one story now, but I've heard from multiple people that they have experience with that, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. Then the second thing would be being aware of scams. Like the most known scams here in China are the tea scam, the tea house scam, and the English practicing scam. So keep those in mind.
Yeah, and there used to be a scam that involved kind of quick changing of money to give you fake money, but now that everybody uses WeChat in pretty much digital payment, that has really decreased a lot. And so you won't actually run into that one, but as a foreigner, you're going to be using cash. Most likely because you won't be able to set up your WeChat account. It won't be easy because you don't have a Chinese bank account and a bank card. So be aware that you might have to pay attention to the money that's changing hands, because that was a scam for a while.
True.
That happened to us, actually.
Yeah. And then finally, traffic. Traffic can get pretty crazy here. Especially in the bigger cities. If you're biking or if you're in a car or bus even, I've had several situations where I had been in accidents, like a bus got hit by another bus or a car, or even biking where people just bike straight into me, or they throw their door open and they don't pay attention to who's coming from the back, and I bike straight into the door. So those are all things you have to be aware of that could happen.
And the other thing is, if you're traveling, there's been a lot of talk in the past about China's food safety. I think things have improved a lot. I used to get sick quite often when I first came here because I was eating low-level kind of street vendor food. I don't eat a lot of that anymore, so I don't deal with that. But if you do eat street food, or you end up in a situation where the restaurant isn't as clean, probably bring some tablets for traveler's diarrhea, just to take those and you'll feel better. Your basic medicine. And you can buy that at any pharmacy here. Just go in and tell them what your issue is and they can help.
And to prevent that, just look for restaurants that are busy and where a lot of locals eat, and then it's probably going to be safe enough.
Yeah, so overall we would say that if you're thinking of traveling in China but you're worried about the risks, they're actually pretty minimal, and they're pretty much the same as any other country that you go to. There's nothing that you really have to be super concerned or worried about. You're going to have the common pickpocketers, the common scams, probably some food issues, but overall, it is a safe country to travel.
Yes. And with that, we will end our video today. We hope it was useful, that you learned something new, and that now you're more confident traveling to China.
Yeah, and be sure to check out the other YouTubers because it was really helpful that they could chime in. See you guys next time, and give this video a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe.
And leave a comment. Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, leave a comment. Tell us if you think it's safe.
Bye.